Christians need to understand that Islam and understanding Islam, understanding our Muslim neighbour and how to reach them is vital, because I think the church faces two huge challenges in the 21st century. The first is secularism, and we see that with the rise of the new atheism, people like Richard Dawkins pumping out books left, right and centre, and there are good resources there. The church, I think, is engaging well. But Islam is the other challenge, and there I think we're not doing quite so well. I think the church has been caught asleep somewhat on that issue, and there are vast numbers of Muslims here in Canada, in North America, and in Europe. In fact, many of us probably have Muslim colleagues, perhaps Muslim neighbours, our children maybe at school with Muslim classmates, and I think it's time for the church really to have a wake-up call and go, there is this great unreached people sitting on our doorstep. So it's vital that we understand Islam, vital that we begin to see Muslims not as people to be afraid of, but as people who need Jesus the same as our atheist friend on the other side of our house, perhaps.
Well, let's start by the name itself. Islam is coming from the word istislam or taslim, which means submission, to submit to Allah, to submit to their God. A lot of people and a lot of Muslims leaders try to explain that Islam coming from the word salam, which means peace. That's not the case.
Islam puts rules for Muslims to follow, and a Muslim has to submit to every rule Islam had put, Allah and Muhammad.
Islam is a very broad, all-encompassing theology or religion, if you will. A Muslim leader is not only a religious leader, is a moral leader, is a philosophy leader, is a historian, and a political and military leader. So that's why when a Muslim cleric is giving the speeches on a sermon on a Friday prayer, he holds a weapon, because there is that kind of I give you a sermon, but I'm also a military leader here. So the whole idea of separation of church and state is again a very foreign idea to a Muslim mind.
If it is this seeking to create the kingdom of God on earth through legislation, of course it's politics. It's more than politics. It's also seeking to establish a relationship with God himself, right, through the 5 pillars of Islam, and personal piety, obedience, personal obedience within the family, within the community. It is a religion, it's a way of life, it's a culture. It expresses itself very diversely in different parts of the Muslim world. Islam in Turkey is not the same as Islam in Iran, is not the same as Islam in Saudi Arabia. There's different. Just as Christianity is very diverse, Islam also is very diverse, of course.
So Islam addresses all of those things. We find that confusing. Muslims will often put that forward as a strong point. They will say, well, look, Islam addresses the whole of life. You Christians, you have your Sunday Christianity, and then Monday through to Saturday, it means nothing. For Muslims, they will say Islam speaks to politics and economics and religion and culture. There is nothing that Islam doesn't address.
If all peoples of the world were to submit to this divinely ordained set of instructions and laws, Sharia, the Hadith, then there would be peace, then there would be harmony. Then all people would be walking in fellowship with each other. They would all become one member of this one great family known as the Ummah al-Islamiyya, the family, the community of Islam. And ultimately that's the goal, to see everyone bow and submit to this divinely ordained set of laws and rules and regulations that was given to Muhammad.
They call themselves Ummah. The word Ummah, it means nation. So this is why when you see today in the news, if something happened to a Muslim, or today even in politics in Palestine, the whole Muslim world, is fighting it. Today, in the Arab Congress, they're still talking about the Palestine issues. Why? Not because only they're Arab, but because they're Muslims.
I think you can really summarize the purpose in life according to Islam as struggling to advance Allah's cause. And you find that little phrase, the cause of Allah, or the way of Allah, or the path of Allah, in several places in the Quran. And Muslims are, the way they see their life is that they are to cause the laws of Allah to be implemented, to cause the infrastructure of human society that has been built up by humans and invented by humans to submit finally to Allah and His law.
For a Muslim can become a Muslim but can't change that. He can't leave Islam. So it's a one-way religion. You walk in, you can't walk out. You're locked under the rules of Islam.
I one time was speaking with a young Muslim, and I asked him the question, if you were to die, would you be certain, this is the classic evangelism question, if you were to die, could you be certain of your salvation? And he looked at me and said, no, nor am I concerned about my salvation. Allah has taken care of that already. I am here on earth to simply be a good submitter to Allah. End of story. And so oftentimes the traditional ways of doing evangelism with Muslims don't work, because the way they view the world, their worldview, is radically different if you look at it really closely to what we would expect.
A woman is taught how to act like a Muslim woman since she is 2 and 3 years old. So for myself, I know starting to ask questions about where God is at 3, 4 years old taught me my place right away. I was told, you're a woman, you can't ask many questions and you can't approach God that way. And many of the women are taught the same way. We're taught, as women, we're taught not to be, we have to cover our heads and we have to dress in a certain way. We have to not be in the presence of men. And we're taught that everything about our bodies is sinful and we have to hide it and we have to be careful with it. We're taught that we're a source of sin for a man. So these details we're taught at home and at school.
We have to be very careful as Christians not to commit a crime of gross generalization. There are Muslims and there are Muslims and there are Muslims and there are Muslims. Like there are Christians and there are Christians and there are Christians and there are Christians. And the best place to start, I believe, is to think about people as human beings created in the image of God.
Well, Muhammad really is the key, the central figure of Islam. Without his life story, there would be no Islam, as it were.
There is a story